Have I seen the movie Bloodsport? Hell yeah.
Before UFC came out, I thought I wanted to become a Kumite champion. I'd watch all the movies about it before UFC came out. The Bruce Lee movies, Enter the Dragon, Bloodsport.
I think it probably was kind of like, it seemed like it was the idea for the way the first UFC was. In fact, like when Street Fighter came out, we were like, oh shit, it's like Bloodsport. You know what I mean? Like everything was like, oh yo, this is a game like Bloodsport. And then when the UFC came out, all I was thinking was, oh my god, it's Bloodsport. And then, but then you never saw Frank Dux. You know, he's like this legendary person that, you know, you always wonder, does he exist? Is he, you know, is this a real guy? I wondered why we don't hear anything about him aside from, you know, Bloodsport and all that kind of stuff. I always wondered, like, you know, does this guy teach anywhere? Does he, when the UFC came out, is he too old? I don't know how old the guy is. You know, could he hang in the UFC? What's up with, you know, Frank Dux?
A flying jump kick 7 feet in the air. A secret arena. And a deadly competition. An American ninja in Hong Kong. In pursuit of a dream and pursued by his own government. It's the stuff martial arts films are made of. Comic book heroes with supernatural abilities. But the most unbelievable part of Bloodsport is that it really happened. Meet Frank Dux, the first American to win the Kumite, a deadly martial arts competition where the only rule is to win.
My name is Frank William Dux.
His life is portrayed in the martial arts cult classic film Bloodsport. He's been awarded numerous times for his contributions to law enforcement, inducted into the Police Hall of Fame, knighted by the Order of St. Michael, and the Knights of Chevalier. He is named as a contributing source in the creation of military fighting doctrine worldwide. He possesses over 16 world records, many of which remain standing unchallenged over a quarter of a century later. The most recent world record Mr. Dux is in possession of is from April 1993, after a 13-year hiatus, being the only person who has ever punched through bulletproof glass, and he did this at the International Martial Arts Festival in Bercy Stadium. Grandmaster Dux is also an inductee into the International Martial Arts Hall of Fame. So can we warmly welcome him to St. Parks as well.
How you doing, sir? Michael Mitchell.
Michael, how are you?
Yes, sir. Good,
Adam,
good,
how are
good.
you?
Good. Good
to meet you.
Good to meet you. Good to meet you. So where is it?
Somebody wants to meet you.
Same old Vic.
Oh, hey!
I didn't have to
You still got it!
Oh man, I miss you. Oh yeah. This is the man who made me. This is the man who made me. I cut my teeth on this. And this guy beat everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. Bill Wallace, Mike Stone, Chuck Norris.
You name him?
Yep.
Mike Foster.
Skipper Mullins.
Yes, yes,
Yep.
yeah.
And he gave me a shot when I was like 13 years old, and then again at 17.
Yeah.
You know? So, cut my teeth on with this guy.
And there are several young guys back in them days that was pretty good. And Frank Dukes happened to be one of those young guys that I took a liking to after getting him a little spanking there. And next year he comes back with improvement, and I like that. I like that.
I was born the son of two immigrants named Margaret Dukes and Alfred Dukes. I was very blessed in the way that they went through a lot of hardship in their life at a young age, and they taught me how to overcome hardship in the sense that my mother was survived the Holocaust in Hungary, and my father had escaped from Austria to Palestine at the time, where he joined the Jewish Brigade, distinguished himself, ended up working in the intelligence industry.
He fought against the British in that time, and then fought with the British.
At that time, they ended up in Canada, where I was born.
We came to the state 1964, January.
And I'll never forget the day my mom told us we were coming to the United States. And that was, she puts me in front of the TV set and says, "See, Frankie, this is what you can expect in the United States. You know, look at the president. If you were there, you'd see him right there." And what I was looking at and didn't know it at the moment, and neither my mom, is at that precise moment, that's when John Kennedy was shot. And I was sort of like, I'm going to the United States, that they shoot their presidents. What's going on here? People inspire me at that time. One was inspiration was Sean Connery in the James Bond series that fed my ego. You're a young man, you know, you see a guy, oh, he's getting all the girls, fancy cars, you know, adventure, excitement, never loses. And he was highly skilled at being able to help other people. And so that, in my visualization, has said, well, that's who I want to be when I grow up. And the next step was, well, you got to be able to protect yourself. So I came across this little book on James Bond and said he studied jiu-jitsu. So that's when I started looking for martial arts. I remember when I was growing up, there's a kid called David Pomerantz. And these other kids would take oranges and stuff and throw it at him as he'd try to deliver the papers. And what affected me was I stood by and did nothing. You know, later on, I remember, God, I was 14, and it was only like 8 of us kids, and there was like 30, 40 of these other kids, all spoiled, all had money. They used to walk around like tough kids, you know, because their daddies would buy them switchblades. And I'll never forget, Dave Pomerantz went to a metal shop in junior high school, and he stole rebar and he cut it up. And it was cut up just the right length for each one of us, where we could carry it under our sleeve all the way up to our elbow here. And sure enough, the kid showed up one day. This guy named Ricky Miller, he pulls out his switchblade, huge blade. We're looking at him, said, to hell with it. All of us came out with these like rebar. You should have seen these kids run. You know, that was it. I mean, we didn't swing, we didn't do anything. Next thing you know, this kid, Ricky Miller's mother, is showing up on my mom's doorstep screaming what a thug I was.
If I tell him don't do that, you can be sure he did it. Very independent already as a kid.
I was a crybaby when I was a kid. Jeez, I was like, up until 13, you said boo to me. I mean, I'd break out bawling. And then one day, something broke inside me. It snapped. I stopped being the sensitive kid caring about what other people thought. All of a sudden, it became more important what I thought about me, what I wanted to do. And that's when I found, I guess, this vision of what a warrior is.
He is one of the top fighters today because of what he went through in the ring with me years ago and others.
At 12 and a half, Frank had no confidence in himself, and he wanted to be the best at something. Then he met Tanaka, an ex-Kumite champ. In a relationship that transcended both culture and the centuries, Tanaka passed down the ancient secrets of the ninja.
Well, when I trained with Tanaka, what was different about it is I got hurt. At first, he used me more or less as example to humiliate his nephews. He was also training at the time. I just gravitated to him. There was just a realness about him. I mean, he was a true, ninja, and that's who Ian Fleming based his character Tiger Tanaka on, and You Only Live Twice. And at that time period in history, I was very lucky because the San Fernando Valley was basically known as the Valley of Champions. Straight up the street would be Bill Ryosaki's school. And I don't know if you can see it from here, but straight down there at the corner was John Leone's Kaji Kempo, Bill Ryosaki's, Rio Dojo school. There was a Taekwondo school, Kung Fu schools. I mean, just the best of the best you could ever imagine. You could literally get on a bus and get there as a kid, walk there if you had to. You could get to anyone, Bang Suhan, Hapkido, and Santa Monica. I mean, it was just, I was very, very lucky that I grew up at that time in history. I was at the right place at the right time. And I remember walking with my dad, and he couldn't afford to pay for my lessons with Ryosaki, so I would walk home, and I sort of like cleaned up in front of his dojo, and then he saw that, and he would kind of nonchalantly show me martial arts and movements, and I'd practice on the sidewalk, and I'd do what the class was doing on the sidewalk, and a lot of kids, they were too busy to even notice I was there. All this right here was the studio. And you'd come in actually, this door, I think it's still here. It's now Kempo school. First time I heard about the Kumite was probably when my instructor was beating the crap out of me, and using it as an example and talking to me about the history of it.
The Kumite was first used by the Korukai, the Black Dragon Society, to measure the fighting skills and spirit of its members. Every 5 years, the best fighters in its ranks would face each other in full contact, with one winner emerging as the superior warrior, the champion.
All the odds were against Frank, right? All these other guys, these Asian guys and everything, right? Those were the ones that they all bet on. And at that time, I think he was doing like 15 to 17 matches in one day. Ungodly amount. And Frank said to himself, if I can catch one of these guys with like a one punch and completely catch him in such a way that I just knock him off his feet, I'll knock him out.
My theory of fighting was, I'm going to wait for the exact precise moment that he's vulnerable, and then just lay into him so fast with so much that, I'm walking out, and he's not.
But all of a sudden, when he had to do his thing, he exploded, right? And it was just like all over in a matter of seconds. He had the fastest matches there, period.
My idea was to hit it and snap it back as fast as I could and get as much kinetic energy as I could at that precise moment. And I was always targeting specific points in the body. I knew exactly if a guy did what, how fast I could get there, and what I was going to hit him with. And I'm listening to the Good Humor Man. There's something interesting about that. Really cool. That's kind of interesting, huh? Huh? That's the ice cream truck. Or we can go get some ice cream. Huh? Yeah, I'll get an ice cream. Let's take a break. So I was, very blessed with my Kumite history to travel all over the world and meet with some of the greatest masters in the world. Many of which were guardians of secrets as to how to heal the body Well, I first met the Shaolin monks in my travels in the 1980s. I didn't even know I was meeting monks at the time. A friend of mine said, you got to come with me and help me. And as time went on, I developed a relationship with the community. How are you? Good. Long time since I've seen you. I think so. This guy is the master of Qigong. That's him. They're the actual Shaolin monks who guard this long tapestry of history and knowledge. You know, is able to learn and tap into it like Qigong. Learn how to heal using energy.
Since he was an infant, 16-year-old Les Toth has suffered from severe cerebral palsy.
When Les first came in, and I looked at him, he was in worse condition than what he'd even described on the phone. However, I looked at it as maybe more of a challenge. I don't know.
He had told Les, by looking at his legs and having Les lift it to see the flexibility in it, and told Les that he would get him up walking.
He didn't believe me. His mother certainly did not believe me, but I believed. To exercise Les's legs, I use an ancient technique called Churka. It's a massage technique, and it works on stimulating the nerves so that they themselves are stimulating the muscles.
For the first time in his life, Les would try to walk. With the strength and stamina he'd acquired from 3 months of training, Les had also gained a great deal of courage.
The ninja has an ability to go a little further with his senses. He tends to advance it a step beyond. What we do here is we develop the auditory senses, much like a blind man would, and we learn to fight blindfolded, basically. The human being is a creature of habit, and one of our worst habits is that we are lazy. And because of that laziness, we do not develop our other senses.
So I grabbed the board, I grabbed it, and then I saw him, he just took a deep breath, and boom!
And I'd have an outstretched hand with a coin in my hand. And he would literally be able to, from 10 feet away, snatch that coin out of my hand before I was able to close my hand. From 10 feet away. I mean, that's how quick the guy was. I mean, lightning fast.
It was really amazing to see the charisma that Frank had with the group, because they would do anything that he said. They worshiped him. And these are not just children. I mean, I'm talking about adults. I'm talking about successful adults. Every walk of life worshiped Frank. And it was really a great time to be able to be a part of that, you know.
One thing the ninja is famous for, I want to point out, is what is known as the death touch. The ability to hit someone, leave no bruise, no mark whatsoever, and yet kill them, or let them die hours later.
This sounds like a James Bond movie, you realize.
Well, the ninjas were the James Bonds of Japan.
Oh, okay. So
now you put 2 of these things, and what are these called?
These
They're
are
sort
just
of a brick, too.
tile. They're real easy to break. I broke the ones over there. I'll leave these intact, in fact, for this time. And I'll break the bottom brick, and I'll leave the top one
That's
intact.
all, just the bottom one?
Yeah, I'll break
the
bottom one.
Go for it, Frank.
Which now, you're going to break this brick down here, not the little ones that you put in there.
That's right.
Okay. How about
And these break easier, by the way.
Okay,
These
let's
are a lot
go.
easier to
How about it, big guy? Should I move? Is this going to fly across here?
No, it's just going to drop.
Okay.
Ready?
Oh.
Oh, my heavens. Hey, and I will demonstrate. These 2, not broken, ladies and gentlemen.
Ninjutsu is a philosophy and a way of life that's centuries old. But it was virtually unheard of by most of us until Hollywood noticed that ninjutsu had a kind of universal appeal at the box office. And now, movie after movie is kindling a fascination with ninjutsu that is reaching mammoth proportions.
Ninja means someone whose spirit and skill is sharper than the edge of a blade.
Classes are springing up all over, attended by people of all ages and both sexes.
Some of you probably know me best by the movie Bloodsport. If you're in the armed forces, you've done any special unit work, you're probably familiar with my works. Now, when a guy throws a punch, you just have to use minimum movement, and all I'm looking for is to what? Position, right? You can steal the peach, you can come here, hit the back of the head, right? You come in here, take the eyes, take the throat. I've got a million things I could do to this poor man. This is the difference between Western and Eastern philosophy in fighting. Western philosophy is like a chess game. It's a war of attrition. Eastern philosophy of fighting is like the game of Go, the least amount of pieces used to contain the opponent. Okay, that's what my system FAST is all about. Focus, action, skill, strategy, tactics. The things that I learned and the formulas I created, I helped use to teach the U.S. Navy SEALs, anti-terror units around the world, how to master really combatives, close quarter combat. I look at you as one giant angle. Is that understood? So what do? I immediately move to the outside of the angle. That puts him in line with him, and he's in the way. Now I'm fighting only one person versus four. Do you understand? The hard part, though, is sometimes when a guy throws a technique, I may want to step in here, but guess who's here? Okay, well, my triangle force is out here, right? But if it's right here, what do you think I'm going to hit? That's exactly.
I learned a lot, the triangle and the movements. And like I said, it's just incredible to be in front of a legend and learn some of the stuff from him.
There you go.
Left, you want to left.
Remember, you want to mirror him.
We both do a little jiu-jitsu and a little MMA. And it's going to help me to change the focus of my emphasis to be able to move to the outside and stay out of his triangle force. What he said was practical and it made a lot of sense.
This is my concept. This is the thing I created based out of my years of experience in the ring. This is not somebody taught me. It's not traditional martial arts. It's just me. You guys get in touch with me anytime you want. You know what I mean? I'm always there for you guys. You understand?
Thank you.
My pleasure, guys.
I know his military history started out as a good one, and that is with the Marine Corps. And he was enlisted Marine, and then he was involved, as far as I know, with special operations for the Marine Corps, which all of us have taken an oath that we cannot get too much into the details by reason of the fact of security concerns, but he was into special operations and then, of course, operating with other government agencies.
In Los Angeles tonight, Frank Dux, who first gained international fame as a martial arts expert. He later became a CIA covert agent under direct command of then-director Bill Casey, and he says he's been involved in the identification and neutralization of terrorism around the world. Mr. Dux is the author of this new book, The Secret Man, an American Warrior's Uncensored Story.
I think you're terribly naive if you don't think that these terrorist organizations don't have their own intelligence arms, and they don't put things together and carry out acts to try to instill fear.
He has written his own biography entitled The Secret Man. I want you to meet a real-life James Bond, folks, Frank Dux. Come on, Frank. There he is. Oh, my gosh, he's got a Bond girl. How are you? Good to see you. How you doing? Come on in. I think the man is going for a martini in the old Bond fashion with a Bond girl. Shaken, not stirred. Enjoy it, sir. So a real life, bye. A real life Bond. I mean, that must be the most exciting life.
It was quite interesting. It was an adventure.
How did you have to maneuver your life?
You live a life of many veils because it takes such a serious tone. You know, we can joke about it, but one wrong turn and, you know, it could cost you not only your life, but possibly the life of your family.
If you're a spy, what are you doing on TV telling everyone you're a spy? The idea of being a spy is that your life is secret and nobody knows about it. So what is this?
Well, first we have to start with my book, Secret Man. I was dying when I wrote it, and I wasn't expecting to actually live long enough to ever see it in print. And as a result, it came out, and my book publisher, who invested some money, asked me to promote the book. I was formerly a covert operative, what they call a contract agent, and I had the pleasure of being able to work for both the United States government and assist the Soviets in their recovery of biological agents. My name is Frank Dux, better known as Feder Duhovny. I first came to this country in the early 1980s, in the height of the Cold War. I was asked here and invited here by Andropov and Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, William Casey. My mission was to assist Soviet units that are known as Spetsnaz, Special Forces units, and the KGB, in the recovery of the loss of a biological weapon believed to be abducted and developed in a place called Compound 19 in Sverdlovsk, in the Urals.
Офицер войск второго назначения в Москве был для того, чтобы иметь меньше неприятностей для себя и для своей семьи. Человека под именем Федора Духовный я впервые услышал в начале 80-х годов. Я тогда получил приказ сотрудничать с американцем. И так и впервые с ним познакомился. С Фрэнк Дуксом я познакомился в Москве в начале 80-х годов. Мне тогда приказали, дали задание на совместную работу вместе с ним. Я подумал, что это несерьезный разговор, он был молодой парень. Но когда мы начали работать с ним, я понял, что это очень способный и толковый человек. Я думаю, что из-за того, что у него была большая сеть спортивных клубов, спортивных секций во многих странах мира, и он мог в то время, значит, он мог помочь разузнать, кто может украсть это биологическое оружие. Тогда поступила информация, что на одном из складов, в одном из городов, возможна утечка этого оружия, то есть кража. И могли быть к этому причастны лица из стран третьего мира. Он имел эту информацию и мог узнать, если бы они попали в поле зрения.
Да, вот я и говорю об этой истории. Именно связано с Федором Духовным. То, что я слышал от моего генерала, который там службу проходил и который мне это все рассказывал.
Ну, мне кажется, этот Федор, как всегда, в данных случаях должен быть специалистом чрезвычайно высокого класса своего дела. И мне кажется, что это представитель какого-то другого государства, не наш. Потому что иначе бы его называли не Федором, а, как правило, у нас Иванами всех называют, когда хотят что-то завуалировать, представить от второго лица. Значит, он мне, конечно, конкретно он не рассказывал, но так, в общем, говорил, что это человек с большой буквы, так он его называл. Человек с большой буквы, необычайной силы, воли, характера стойкого, целеустремленный, такой, который может выполнить эту задачу. Потому что это обычный человек не в состоянии, ему это не под силу, ни физически, ни интеллектуально. Это должен быть, как мы обычно говорим, что это сверхчеловек должен быть. Какой-то необыкновенный человек, который решится на все это. Это слишком серьезно, слишком ответственно. И не только перед одним, допустим, государством, а перед всем миром, коль такая задача стоит.
People in my business are usually motivated by two things. There's a lot of guys who hate. That's what feeds them, keeps them alive. That's what makes it easy to kill someone, objectify the person as a monster. And then there are persons like myself who do it from a very cold and logical point of view, realizing there's no choice in the matter.
That will make you Frank Dux. No. It's Dux. Gotcha. Like put up your Dukes, right?
I remember like a young guy named Sheldon Lettich. He'd graduated American Film Institute. We were friends.
We just kind of hit it off as friends back then. We're driving around one day, and he was telling me about this secretive martial arts tournament that he'd been to a few times called the Kumite. And he said that a nickname for the event was Bloodsport. Well, this rang a bell, rang a big bell for me right off the bat, and I said, that's a great title for a movie. In fact, this whole concept that you're talking about, the secret martial arts contest called the Kumite, that sounds like a cool idea for a movie.
Sheldon's dream was to be a writer-director in Hollywood. Got to school for it, Vietnam veteran.
So I decided I was going to make this little movie, and I titled it Firefight. It was a script that I wrote.
It was a way for Sheldon to show off that he does have the ability and talent to put together a project, write it, and direct it.
It was about a Marine infantry squad. Frank said, hey, look, I'll help you put this thing together. I'll even put a little money into it if I can play one of the lead roles.
Waterbowl! Get these dead gooks off my hill!
Kuda, Stockdale wants to know if the LZ is secure.
Fucking A it is. Stockdale, this is E2 Bravo.
Anyway, so Mark DeSalle was cutting a movie in the same booth that Sheldon was.
Next door, there were some people doing a porno movie. And the guy who was producing it was named Mark DeSalle. Mark came by and wanted to take me to lunch and see if I was willing to write a script for him for very little money. And the script that he pitched to me was called Kickboxer. And I thought it was kind of a lame idea. But, I did like the idea of doing a martial arts film. I said, look, let me pitch you another idea, which I think would make a better movie. It's called Bloodsport. It's based on the real story of this guy named Frank Dux.
I showed him some videotape fights of the Kumite matches. I had to prove that to Mark DeSalle, show some fights of myself.
Then from there, I wrote a screenplay. Next part of this story is who's going to play the lead role? Who's going to play Frank?
Sheldon called me up one day and says, "You got to go see this film, No Retreat, No Surrender." I said, "Why is that?" He says, "You're not going to believe this." I said, "I think we found the lead star to play you." And the thing that Sheldon pointed out to me was he moves just like you. He looks just like you.
We interviewed hundreds, almost 1,000 people looking for who would be the lead character. He's got the best martial artist abilities, but more than that, he's very handsome, he's very charming, and has a film presence that will certainly make him a superstar.
How much of the movie follows your actual story, and how much goes off on a path?
It's very important to note when you make a movie, obviously, that you have to please visually. And in the sense of the visual, they have certain idiosyncrasies that are not in line. But the spirit of the movie, the spirit of the event, the spirit of the fighters is 100% the truth.
We finally saw the first cut of the film. In fact, I think I saw it with Frank, and we weren't very happy with the way the movie turned out. The first cut was really crappy.
But I never thought it was going to affect that many people's lives. I thought it was a turkey. I thought, oh my God, my career is ruined forever. I really did.
The next time I saw the film, it was much, much better. It was, it had improved 100%. I think I saw that next cut with Frank, and we were both
very enthusiastic about the film. That is what really catapulted Jean-Claude from being pretty much a nobody to basically his first taste of international stardom.
Where is Jean-Claude? Where is Jean-Claude? I say, Van Damme from Milano, remember? Stallone. And I go, Van Damme! They go, they gave me a card, they say, tomorrow come to my office, and we made a deal, Bloodsport. Yeah.
We're talking about bulletproof glass and how it works. I started thinking, yeah, but if you could kinetically link to the glass and drive the force through, it should break. And then next thing you know, I said, well, let me give this a shot. It's about kinetic linking, about how to get my whole body just perfectly aligned for that one split infantile fraction of a second. There's always that guy who wants to be the guy who says, yeah, I knocked out Frank Dux, because I've never been knocked out and never been beaten. I hired a guy to work for me by the name of Zane Frazier. He shows up, and I'm at the Draka Martial Art Festival, and I'm there to sign autographs. And there's a challenge booth 30 feet away, and the guy shows up, and he starts screaming and yelling at the top of his lungs. And so I just kind of didn't think much of it. I went to the security guards. I said, look, this guy's in here. I've seen him with 3 or 4 other guys. They're eyeballing me. I think he's up to no good. I hear a voice. It's him. I just turn back around. The guy cold cocks me with brass knuckles on. Hits me. 4 days go by, and next thing you know, I've got these headaches. And I go, this is not normal for me. I get hit, okay. I'm used to, but my coordination was off. My speech was even getting worse. Went to the doctor. He immediately made me go see a neurologist. The neurologist immediately had me see a neurosurgeon. They put me in an MRI and said, guess what, we're putting you in surgery right away. Says, you've got a huge tumor.
I think he was devastated when he learned about the tumor, and I think he thought he was going to die.
Then I ended up with complications, from it. I found out I had a spinal fluid leak, which later turned into spinal meningitis. When I recovered from the meningitis after being in a coma for God knows how long, I had to go through brain surgery again. By that time, my wife had left. We had a baby on the way. She had aborted the baby. She couldn't face me after that. And my whole life kind of came apart.
Yeah, you just sit there and you just cry. How can you help the guy through that pain, through that wall of pain in that period of time? He lost a lot of the use of one side of his body. I believe that he was wearing a patch on one eye, and it took a long time for rehabbing and to build himself back up. He was not Frank Dux per se anymore, even though he was Frank Dux.
I could tell you that the tumor made him forget a lot.
I mean, every once in a while I'll be standing in line and a guy thinks I'm being rude to him, and it's someone I knew for maybe 2-3 years, and it's, I just really don't remember them. It's embarrassing. You know, I got to tell you, well, you know, it's embarrassing to, I mean, it's an embarrassing moment in my life, you know. Who wants to be in, you know, he really showed my vulnerability.
I don't think he was able to keep his martial arts dojos open anymore. He had somebody else running them, but no, he was really in bad shape.
You can knock me down, I'm getting up. Knock me down, I get up. Knock me down, I get up. I did that when I had my brain tumors. Came up to me, oh, you will never be the same. Oh, you'll never be able to work out. Oh, you'll never be able to fight. Well, guess what? I proved them all wrong. In business, made money, lost a fortune. Guys normally, they break down, they cry, woo is me, they go kill themselves. BS, that's the time you pick yourself up, you get up and you get going again. If anything, I say, okay, learn that lesson, time to move on. And like I always said, you know, count your failures as blessings. Because from every failure, that's when you build your grit. That's when you build who you are. That's when you get to know who you are.
Jean-Claude Van Damme, sometimes known as the Muscles from Brussels, used his skills as a ballet dancer and a martial arts expert to build a lucrative career as a Hollywood action hero. Van Damme's toughest fight was against another legendary martial arts exponent, Frank Dux. There were no ninja kicks or karate chops. This showdown took place in a courtroom.
Dux says Van Damme is a liar, and he's suing him for $900,000 over a movie deal. He claims his former buddy cheated him out of profits from a movie the two co-wrote in 1991.
Jean-Claude, every time his career was sliding, he'd always reach out to me.
So we're gonna make a great film together. Let's do it. Yeah, Jean-Claude's gonna be great. I even feel Frank telling me that. And I said, I'm gonna help you with your life.
He basically pled with me, come back, work with me, blah, 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 and made a bunch of promises. And so we worked on it, got a beautiful script done. We were going to move forward, get the whole thing done, get contracts done. And Jean-Claude says, look, man, it's dead. I don't know what to tell you. The project's dead. I got to go do these other projects. He says, but one day we'll be back doing it. One day, I promise you, promise you, promise you.
For the first time, Van Damme was going to direct himself in a project he'd written. It was a movie called The Quest. Out of work and recovering from brain surgery, Frank Dux had heard rumors that The Quest was just a remake of his and Van Damme's old Kumite project.
When I heard that these guys were just trying to cut him out of The Quest completely, I really did feel a certain amount of, I felt sorry for Frank. He wasn't somebody that should have just been discarded like a piece of junk. He had paperwork for what was originally called Enter the New Dragon, and these guys were saying, well, this is not Enter the New Dragon, this is a completely different project. But it wasn't, it was the same, it was basically the same thing. It was basically Bloodsport in the 20s.
Then Dux lucked out. A friend discovered the Writers Guild was ruling on credits for The Quest. Dux rushed over to submit his and Van Damme's old Kumite project for comparison. In a surprise move, the Writers Guild awarded both Frank Dux and Van Damme story by credit on The Quest. Getting that credit was just the ammunition Dux needed against his old friend.
It wasn't about the money. It was never about the money for me. It was about him, holding him accountable, because nobody in Hollywood was holding this guy accountable at the time for what he was doing. He finally went to a friend of mine, a mutual friend named Frank Mattioli, and he contacted Frank and he convinced Frank to have me call him back.
In Hollywood, points means a percentage of movie profits.
Mr. Van Damme said to you that there were points on the project?
Yes.
Points for whom?
For Frank Dux.
Dux has scored an early victory. Now Van Damme must contradict his friend's testimony or lie, but Van Damme hedges.
Did you say to Mr. Mattioli that Mr. Dux had a piece of the back door on the movie? Yes or no?
Another piece. I said to Frank Mattioli, if Frank Dux will do a script with me and he'll put his name there, he will have a backdoor, which means after my life, after that script life, he will do some more business in the film business.
Van Damme swears he never mentioned a percentage of the profits.
He basically put his hands over his heart and said, Frank, you're my brother, and I love you, and I'm talking about making a deal for you that'll be the financial security for the rest of your life. People don't get it. You know, yeah, Jean-Claude hurt me, okay? He really hurt me. He really let me down. But deep down inside, I always try to protect the memory of the kid who came over here, took lessons from me 3 times a week. You know, that's the guy I remember. That's the guy I love. That's the guy I still think about.
What Jean-Claude was maintaining during the quest was that I'm not a producer on this movie. I can't pay Frank. So the name Eugene Van Varenberg was on the poster. Frank's attorney asks me, who's Eugene Van Varenberg? I said, that's Jean-Claude's father. So that pretty much cinched it as far as the jury was concerned. Frank should have won. He should have won, just based on that. All right, just based on the fact that he had this injury, he was in the hospital. Here was some poor schmuck basically being ganged up on by some Hollywood big shots. He didn't need to say shit. He had that trial in the palm of his hands until he opened his mouth.
He brought the tape recorder to his mouth, and he repeated what the deal was.
For the first time, Frank Dux seems to have the proof to defeat Jean-Claude Van Damme in a bitter lawsuit. Plus, he says there's written evidence of the deal.
I was looking at the notes, and he gave me the steno pad to take home with me.
And did you eventually, at some point in time, put it in your safe?
Yes, sir, I did.
January of 1994, what happens in Northridge, California?
The earthquake.
What happens to your apartment?
My apartment was destroyed.
I drove past his building, and you could see daylight through the building. I mean, the building was damaged. And what happened to the tapes, all of your work, to the extent that you kept it, the notepad?
It got bulldozed away with all the other rubble in the earthquake. And I was told we only had 15 minutes to gather our things and to grab what I could and get out of my apartment.
So this is Mr. Duke's apartment after the earthquake, is that correct?
That's correct.
But tons of concrete did not fall down in front of that building, did it?
No.
Dux now swears his brain surgery at the time so disoriented him that his sense of time and place went totally haywire. But Judge Cato has ruled Dux' illness as inadmissible.
And also, what's real interesting, the pictures she showed in the court were always only the front of the building, and it's shot from the middle. Anything that could have proved up my case was stopped. Anything that proved up damages by the judge was stopped.
I flew down from Seattle to Los Angeles to actually be a witness in court, but the judge wouldn't allow my testimony.
The judge didn't allow me a single or impeachment or rebuttal witness. As soon as he found out of the existence of Cinda, and he found out of the existence of Benson, and he found out everybody else we had ready to bring in, the judge ends the trial that day.
Will the clerk please read the verdict?
Question number 1. Do you find that defendant Jean-Claude Van Damme made an offer sufficiently definite and certain as to be capable of acceptance by plaintiff Frank Dux? Answer, no.
Van Damme wins in a vote 11-1.
Everything in life has its pluses and its minuses. The minus side of it is, I became a target of indiscriminate hate. that article hurt me in ways you can't imagine. I held it responsible for probably destroying my ability to have a family, you know, and have some kind of normalcy, because you can't get past it. He was just vehement on making a name for himself at my expense, and it created a lot of pain for me.
There's a lot of people out here who are just taking what someone else is stating, what they want them to think, and they're actually internalizing this as the truth.
Frank kept saying to them, I'm telling you, there are witnesses. There are witnesses. There are people that saw me do it.
You know, I get frustrated because the things that I hear are things that some things I know aren't true.
People say a lot of stuff, but they don't know who he is. They've never seen him. They think of him as John Claude. They don't think of him as Frank Dux.
When you look at Bursty, if that was in a room in a stadium with tens of thousands of people, if it wasn't done, so that means tens of thousands of people were duped. You know what I mean? That's like the ultimate Houdini trick, if you can pull that off.
You could see the glass being shot, you know, ahead of time, and you can see the bullet in the glass still there. You know, yet all you hear about is this one guy.
He was actually going to Paris to put on a martial arts show. We spent much time on trying to find plexiglass that would break and simulate bulletproof glass. I looked at it as we were putting on a martial arts magic show.
And then people are holding him up like he's some kind of authority. The only guy who ever disputed my breaking my bulletproof glass.
What condition was the glass in at that point?
Pieces,
Okay.
and still connected. Some of it was still connected to the actual frame.
I don't make things up, and I feel if I saw blood, I saw glass, pieces of glass being taken out of his foot, and I held it. So like I said, I've held these, I know what it's real.
You know, this guy from the Los Angeles Times lying and saying I bought my trophy, and you know damn well I didn't. You know, if you look at the damn receipt, you can see my name is even on it. You know, it's the UKS. You can see that it's not even the same trophy. It's for an object that has 2 gold cups and 4 judo figures. People who would, Ed Parker, come to my rescue and talk to this guy and tell him, well, what are you talking about? I could give you people, members of my own extended family, who saw this kid fight, who know about him.
Now, I knew he was a martial artist because I'd go to his dojo and I'd see him teaching stuff to the students and doing stuff and demonstrating stuff, and he really didn't know what he was doing.
If he was a fraud, the United States government would never hire this man. This man has a secret clearance. I mean, if the guy wasn't what he was, why would the United States Army invite him to come? I mean, we all know his background. He was an intelligence specialist. I mean, to be an intelligence specialist, you gotta be solid. I mean, the guy has to be real.
He said since he was doing secretive work for the military, that his stuff wasn't on the record. You know, his records were blacked out, they were hidden. There's only a few people that are allowed to look at his records.
I believe that the LA Times reporter said the military did the neither confirm nor deny line with Frank.
Documents that would normally be available under the Freedom of Information Act. The thing that has happened is that national security has taken much more of a status than the Freedom of Information Act.
I know that Frank Dux was initially in the Marine Corps as a Lance Corporal according to his discharge paperwork and his DD-214. Unfortunately, that's one of the only things that matches up. One of the negative points about working in intel is that the government tends to cloak or ghost a lot of your records because you're doing a lot of things that the general public doesn't really need to know about.
You can see this character service is honorable, 0200 basic intelligenceman for his MOS, and related civilian occupation, and DOT number is intelligence specialist.
Through my time being a records custodian, I've been able to pick up on some of these differences, and I've seen it more than once, not only with him, but with some of my own soldiers.
page 11 of his contract, which shows several different examples of some false signatures here. This one here is actually really the only true Frank Dux signature on this page. Now, just looking at these two signatures side by side, you can tell that there are some obvious discrepancies just in the writing style. And then here it just looks like he got lazy and used a marker or something, and you can't even tell that that's a D and an X there. So it was obvious that this was done by, the signatures on this page were done by several different people. This one here shows that he has no combat experience, and no expeditions, no awards, whereas on his DD-214 actually shows that he was awarded the Good Conduct Medal. Basically what this implies is that a front file was created for Frank Dux.
And to me, the fact that there are some gaps in there indicates that he was on a very important mission at that particular time, which the government certainly is aware of, and Frank probably still has awareness of, but is not in the public interest to disclose.
To some extent, the problem with Frank's verification of all this, of course, was that he couldn't verify anything any more than he did. I believe that just like every story, there's probably a good amount of truth to it.
We had Frank as one of the co-fight choreographers. We were also going to use him on Double Impact.
Basically, I'd worked with Jean-Claude on a film called Double Impact. I went to China with him, with Sheldon Lettich.
That was when Frank really started, he really started going off the deep end a bit.
And a lot of times it basically had me ghostwriting in the background, adding dialogue, story points, action.
And he just started becoming a bit of an embarrassment.
He brought me over there to be a consultant. I'll do the fight choreography. I agreed to that. That's what my contract says, but I'm not going to sit here and start figuring out the end of your story for you.
We started having some problems with Frank on Only the Strong also. I was the guy who kind of put my ass on the line for him. I introduced him to the producers. Hey, we used this guy in Lionheart. He worked on Bloodsport. There was just a lot of big talk coming from him, but not much in the way of imagination or not much in the way of expertise. And I knew he had the expertise, and I knew he had the imagination. There was really nobody on the set that wanted to work with him anymore. So I just told him, look, I'm just tired of hearing all your BS, and I just don't want anything more to do with you.
If you really want the truth about Sheldon, Sheldon was being paid by Van Damme, and that was his money. So he had to be loyal to him.
Finally, I got tired of, Sheldon and some other people taking credit for things and taking credit, and getting the financial rewards because I was too naive.
What was weird about Frank and his ideas is that sometimes he would put himself into the story and say that he actually participated and actually did this stuff. I think it was, it's just some kind of a psychological tick that he had, where he'd convince himself, so he wouldn't think he was lying to people.
See, he's nuts. See, he's this. See, he's this. And people be so deeply affected because those things are so inflammatory that no one would help me. Not law enforcement, not the people who are supposed to protect me. I'm sitting out there in the cold. You couldn't even get an attorney. Would you normally have rights to do? So it just, and then when one guy gets away with it, then the next guy says, oh, I can do that. And then I can do that. And so all of a sudden, here I am in the ring, and physically, yeah, I can defend myself better than probably anybody. But when it came to my civil rights, forget it. No one likes to be lied about, and I really didn't care what people thought of me because I was living an extraordinary life. But when I started to see it affect the people around me, people I loved, and how disturbed they were by it, especially my brother's kids, I'd hear about it. I wanted to take some heads, I gotta tell you. I mean, I was pretty ticked, and I was even more ticked in the sense that, they weren't even doing it from a point of view of being mistaken about it. This was just plain being really vicious. Even if they were given the proof, it was awarded to them like the LA Times guy, John Johnson. I mean, people came forward, said they were eyewitnesses. He wouldn't quote them. And we're talking regular people, you know, who could stand them eyewitnesses like Ed Parker. I'm talking, you know, Muay Thai, you know, kickboxing champions, karate champions. And, you know, he found it more important to quote my business competitors and not even mention that they were competitors or had something to gain from lying. That was disturbing, but the problem is, you know, it was being locked out and not even getting a chance to tell my side of the story for years. That's what really hurts, you know, because you live my life. You're defending what you think are freedoms that we have, and all of a sudden you're finding out the freedoms don't really exist. They start to look mythic, you know, like equal protection under the law, or, you know. And then you start seeing how they affect the people around you, including people who are supposed to be neutral. I remember my dad was kidnapped, and I went to report to the police, and somebody showed him these articles, you know, and next thing you know, they weren't doing anything. And I knew they weren't doing anything because the guy wouldn't even break out a notepad to take the notes. And I eventually had to take matters in my own hands at that point and said, screw the system. I dealt with it. That's all I can say about that. And believe me, I dealt with it. But I felt terribly let down at the time because of it. And the hardest thing was seeing the people around me, really good people, like Gordon Rakusa and Benny, and people I loved in my life. A gal I really loved, her name was Von Dodd. We were living together at the time. We were going to get married, and all of a sudden she's, you know, overcome with fear. Her image is destroyed because of these guys trying to play vigilantes, like they knew it all. And then you have these books, you know, coming out. Not books, but I mean this article coming out. And if you read the article, you can see it's just totally vicious in nature. I mean, it's just inflammatory. It's even down to the point where here's this guy, a so-called writer, and he's calling me names. I mean, what is that about? I thought they were supposed to report the news and not create it. And unfortunately, I think the news today is more along the lines of how much money can we get from a story. Truth be damned. I know what the truth is. My friends who've known me for 25 years know the truth. They've been around to see everything. And, you know, you can keep a lie going for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Try to keep something going for a lifetime. You know, it just ain't happening.
That's right.
There it is.
A Lifetime Achievement Award. Be it known that on this first day of August 2009, Hachi Frank Dux has been reunited with the Black Dragon Fighting Society International and is bestowed the title Godfather of the MMA in recognition of his many achievements as a full contact fighter in the International Fighting Arts Association, Kuroka Kai, as well as his ongoing actions to promote the true Budo of the martial arts. Hachi Frank Dux.
Speechless. I wish I could say I did it myself, but that'd be a lie. Tonight I owe this achievement to the men who forged me when I was a young man. It's through them that I got the grit. From them I got the skills and the opportunity to say, we want you to go represent us. We're going to even help host this event that you all know today as Bloodsport, and later on became what you know today as the
Ultimate Fight Challenge and mixed martial arts. And let me tell you, in those days, it was a little different. Master Pierce will tell you. He cut his teeth on that too. Anything went. Elbows, headbutts, no groin protection. You know, he went for it. But there was a healthy respect there that sometimes doesn't exist today. You'd never see a guy jump up on a, you know, and hooler and holler because he beat somebody. You'd see him walk over that man, pick him up, cradle him, make sure he was okay. And that's, I think, is the spirit of this room. And I think that's our legacy. And we all share this award. I thank you. I'd like to think of it as our award, not just mine. Thank you.
Most individuals throughout history who have been phenomenal individuals, who have done great things for humanity, who have impacted people's lives in tremendous ways, as Grandmaster Dux has, they've had some form of controversy surrounding them at one point in time. Regardless of all that negativity, there's good people out there who admire him and would appreciate his impact that he would have on their lives.
But it's the man heart that can get out there and train and work with what he has been taught and what he's picked up in the ring and go from there. And my hat's off to him.
His knowledge and his relationship with those in foreign countries, I think, is such that it benefits the United States in every way.
You don't find too many friends in Hollywood, you know. Frank's always been good to me. He's always been a good friend of mine, always concerned about my well-being, which is very important, but you don't really find those type of things in Hollywood.
I feel very lucky to be not only one of his students, also one of his closest friends. He doesn't have many friends, believe me.
You know, when it comes to the kumite and stuff like that, whether or not he was trained by a guy named Tanaka to be a ninja, I really don't know.
Frank, I wish you would tell us stories that could all be verified. I want to know.
In life, we have a tendency to be so worried about proving the other guy wrong that we miss the point entirely. That what could have been a great opportunity was ruined by people trying to prove or disprove a point that didn't need verification.
A terrific friend, wonderful colleague, and one of the best martial artists that ever lived. That's it. And that's a wrap. That's all I can tell you.
My body's ready, my heart's on